Hello, this is Brian Mercer for Author Magazine. Today I'll be talking with Terry Person, author of Sweet Song. Person received his Master of Arts in Creative Writing from the State University of New York at Stony Brook. He's published 4 novels, 2 poetry collections, and a non-fiction book about the small press. His novel, Wolf's Right, was nominated as the Fiction Book of the Year by Forward Magazine and won the POW Book of the Year Award and the Star of Washington Award. He lives and writes on a small farm in Chimacum, Washington.
What they tell you when you start to write, of course, is that after you write your first book, and you've edited your first book once or twice, don't just sit there and wait for it to be published. Write the next one. So when you're done with this one, write the next one, and then write the next one. And then, as we all know, it takes sometimes 6 months or more for an agent to get back to us. When I first started writing years ago, that you'd mail it out and you'd wait and wait. And then you'd wait, even if you had an agent, you'd wait for them to pitch it and get it sold to a publisher. And so the time is huge. And when you look at the writing of the book, you continually write new books. So I have all these books that I've written along the way and continually then just mail them out. So what happened to me was and I like working with small independent publishers. I find that they're easier for me to work with. A lot of times the type of novels I write are more suited to that than mass market paperback kind of things. I do a lot of poetry. The poetry is always, with the smaller press typically. So eventually I just have a lot of books available and I have them out to different people. You can't tell whether or not the literary title is going to make it into the mainstream until it's published and out in the mainstream. There are a lot of small presses, and always have been, university presses and small independent publishers who have bestsellers and do great work. And I think it just is a toss-up. Once you get your book done and it's out there, the audience tends to tell you whether or not it's something to be read by 300,000 people versus 10,000 people.
So as a novelist, working with small presses allows you to not have to have an agent necessarily.
Right. Yeah. A lot of times it's easier to just send it in directly to the publisher or to an editor. Since I've done a lot of poetry, I have poetry out all the time. So I'll have 30 or 40 batches of poetry out to the small magazines looking for publication, 2 or 3 poems at a time. So I have a lot of material out, so I'm comfortable with having more than one piece out, even when it's a novel. I think what worries me the most about novels is that I don't want to bombard any one press. So I don't want to send them something, and if I get a rejection, send them another one. And then if I get a rejection, send them a third one.
Right.
All of a sudden it looks like I'm hacking them out. Even though I've spent years and years doing this, 20-some years writing, they don't know that. All they know is that, geez, I just rejected one and I've got another one sitting here. I'm real careful not to bombard them with pieces. Of course, there are only 6 major publishers out there. So you can't help but bombard them if you've got as many novels as I have, or a lot of writers have novels that they've rewritten. You have 3 or 4 that you wrote 10 years ago and they didn't get published and you stop mailing them. So all of a sudden you're rewriting and you're thinking you're doing, well, of course, you're doing a better job. You're fixing them, so to speak, and you want to get them back out again. You want to give them another chance. It's hard to make that happen if you've only got 6 places to send them.
Sure.
There are all the imprints. So that's the other reason I like a small independent publisher. There are literally thousands and thousands of them, and they're all looking for good books.
And would you say that they're mostly looking for literary books, or you're saying that all kinds, anyone who has a book, even if it's a genre, say science fiction or fantasy, there are independent book publishers for them?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, a lot of them.
Do you use an outline?
I do not. I use, like I said, sometimes I'll have jotted notes. And so I'll have notes that I pull out and I look through every once in a while, but I don't use a strict outline. I look at the character. The character is so much more important to me than anything else, and I suppose that's partly why I go to small press too. I'm not looking for plot points as much as I am character arc. I want to know who my character is, and how they're going to change, and maybe a few of the things that are going to push the buttons to force them to change. And that's how I write. And I want it to be all about that character. I want people to get excited about reading this person's life story.
I like this idea of not having an agent and being able to send directly to small presses. What advice would you give them?
Sure. There's a lot of advice, actually, these days particularly. The first one would always be to be careful, because when you're working with any small outfit that's, being run by 2 or 3 people, you've got to talk to them and feel comfortable with them. Read some of their books, that sort of thing. I think the other thing is to make the decision. Make a decision yourself on how you're okay with getting your book out. If you really feel that the only way you want your book to go out is as done by Random House, well then read all the Random House books and figure out what they want, and work on that if that's what your interest is. And I know people who have done that. They said, this is the kind of book I want to do. These books sell, and that's the kind of book I want to write. So I'm going to read 30 of those until I'm just able to copy this and to do it. I tend to write differently. I want to write from my deepest space, if you will, and I want to write something that I feel is significant, and it brings a new vision to an old idea. So this whole idea in this book is that I want it to be different than other people's books. I want people to be able to read it and say, wow, I didn't think about it this way. That's not how I used, my mind has changed, or it's at least opened up. So that's important to me. And most of the time, small independent publishers like that kind of work. That's what they look for.
Right.
So for me, it was a decision to go to those kind of people.
So what advice would you give to people then who want to do this, to follow this path, and to find legitimate publishers?
First thing is just mail things out. Mail them out, mail them out, mail them out. And then when you get a publisher who says, we're interested in your book, don't just say yes.
Right.
Say, let's talk.
Because I can imagine if you or anyone is trying to get published and they get that letter, and it's not just getting an agent, you're getting published. Someone's offering to publish your book. The immediate reaction is to pop the cork on the champagne and to celebrate. And you're saying, well, and you could do that, but you're saying you got to do your homework first. And before you get too far down the process, especially with a smaller publisher, you need to get to know them.
Yeah, exactly. You look for publishers who you believe are publishing the same kind of things you write. And I think that's an easy thing to do. And those are large publishers and small publishers. If you're okay with going with small publishers, you can get to them without an agent. If you really want to go to the large publisher, you need the agent. So that's just the difference. And there are small publishers all over. University presses are amazing at publishing, things that have a relatively narrow market, but very important books.
Well, thank you, Terry, for the interview. This has been great.
Sure, I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
This is Brian Mercer for Author Magazine. I've been speaking with Terry Person, author of Sweet Song.